Hey guys, Dustin here to review the Week 10 of the ACC football of 2015. First up, we have to get to the big matchup in the conference this week. You had number 1 Clemson versus number 16 Florida State. You had Florida State, a team that had won the last 3 times these two teams had met. All 3 times have resulted in the division and the conference championship. They represented the ACC in the Orange Bowl, the National Championship, and the College Football Playoff last year in the Rose Bowl. This is a win that Clemson desperately needed to solidify themselves as not only the number 1 team in the nation, not only the top team in the conference, but also in the division. To beat the champ, you have to beat the champ. And they did that in rather convincing fashion Saturday after allowing a 75-yard Dalvin Cook touchdown very early on the second play of the game, and also a couple of big runs on their second possession that resulted in an interception. Clemson's defense rebounded, regrouped, and held Dalvin Cook to under 100 yards the rest of the game. Unfortunately, he still got 194 because you can't take out the big runs for your calculations. But Clemson did a great job. The offense powered through. They stuck to the running game. They didn't get away from it. And they emerged victorious over a 10-point win. They clinched the Atlantic Division. They officially will be in Charlotte on December 5th against North Carolina, who I don't think has officially clinched yet, but they're absolutely out. They've already beaten Pitt and Duke, and a win this week should definitely clinch it if they haven't already. So a big win for Clemson. For Florida State, it is a disappointing end. Both of their losses this year have been disappointing to Florida State fans. You had that blocked field goal return, another kick 6 that will go down in ACC history. Georgia Tech snapping all of Florida State's ridiculous ACC streaks. And then for Georgia Tech to be the team to do it after barely losing to them in the ACC championship game last year, I thought was interesting. And then they come into Clemson and play their best game they've played all year, by far, offense and defense. Sean McGuire got a little rattled. I was actually at the game. You could tell the crowd noise was playing a lot of tricks on them. They had some delay of penalties, some false starts, which they kind of have had all year. But it was very interesting to be there and to watch Sean McGuire, who I watched grow up last year in the second half against Clemson in Tallahassee, kind of struggle to find some footing against this defense, and then for the Clemson defense to swallow up Dalvin Cook for a majority of the second half, and to only allow a field goal in the second half, I thought was pretty strong showing. So Clemson, from here on out, the road is paved. It is set. All you got to do is beat Syracuse, beat Wake Forest, beat South Carolina, beat North Carolina, and you're in, man. You're the number 1 team. For Florida State, they went out. They have a tough game against right now number 11 ranked Florida in the last game of the year. Of course, no conference championship game for them. And then they will be sitting at 10-2, trying to get into one of the other New Year's Six bowls. If all the other Big 12 teams and Big 10 teams in front of them can kind of kick each other out and they can get some elbow room in there. So, big game for the Tigers, big day for the conference. If Florida State had beaten Clemson, it actually would have been bad for the ACC. So it's kind of interesting to know if a few people up in Greensboro were rooting for the Orange team. Okay, so Notre Dame is not technically considered an ACC team, but they might as well be. Pitt definitely is. So the second biggest game in the conference this weekend was Notre Dame's 42-30 win over Pittsburgh, a game which the game was actually not as close as the score seems to indicate that it was. Quarterback Deshaun Kaiser for Notre Dame had a great game. He threw for multiple touchdowns, ran for another one. He was very precise, throwing the ball exactly where it needed to be, very beautifully thrown balls. Wide receiver Will Fuller caught 3 of those touchdowns for a career day for him. For Pitt, another game where coming into the year you didn't think it would be close, and Pat Narduzzi has done a really great job, especially with that defense, in trying to help them get acclimated to stiffer competition than the ones they had been facing in the past. I think they're still on the right path. They have 3 losses, but think about who their 3 losses are. Their losses to undefeated Iowa by a field goal, 1 loss Notre Dame, and 1 loss North Carolina. So Pitt is still on the right road. Just got to keep at it and try to get to a better bowl this year than what you kind of expected coming in. I think you're ahead of progress. And as for Notre Dame, moved up to number 4 in the college football playoff rankings. It's going to be hard to jump you if you only lose 1 game, but you still have that Stanford game ahead. So we'll see how it goes. But for right now, Notre Dame, though not technically in the conference, is definitely bolstering the ACC's resume right now. All right, guys, we know who the Atlantic Division champions are, but who are the Coastal Division champions? Well, a key matchup in that was this weekend when North Carolina played host to Duke and rolled up 66 points on the Blue Devils. To put that in perspective, that is the most points ever scored in the series, and they have been playing for a very, very, very long time. Now, Duke got 31, which is upsetting a little bit for North Carolina if you think about your defense. Your defense is better, but Duke is not a bad team at all. To throw up 66 on them, starting with that really just greatly timed flea flicker at the very beginning of the game to start it off for North Carolina, and it never really stopped. They were up, I believe, 42 to 10 at the half or something like that. North Carolina's offense is clicking on all cylinders. Marquise Williams looks great. Switzer is so fast. They have Elijah Hood at running back, who they have decided not to forget about this year and actually try to get them some yards and some touches for him. But they are a team to reckon with. They will probably, all they have to do is win Saturday or have Pitt lose, and they will represent the Coastal against North Carolina in what will be a fantastic ACC championship game. I assume it'll be a sellout, probably their first one up in Charlotte. It will be a great game, but 66 points, that is astounding. Now, if you look at their resume, North Carolina hasn't beaten anybody of note outside of Pitt, who now has 3 losses, and Duke, who now has 2 or 3 losses. So it's still interesting. They're ranked number 23 now, which I think is too low in the new poll, but we'll see. But a great win for North Carolina in a rivalry that they will definitely, even though it's football and not basketball, they will definitely be bragging about this game for the next year. So great win for North Carolina. Next up, we have Louisville and Syracuse. Louisville's offense finally found some ground, throwing up 217 yards running and 362 yards passing. First, a 500-yard, I don't know if it's their first one, but a 500-yard day. Season high on offense for Louisville, which is good. They may have finally found a quarterback in that weird quarterback rotation they keep doing. The bad news is Syracuse defense is not very good. In the last 2 games, they have given up 575 yards to Florida State and 579 to Louisville. And they have the number 1 team in Clemson coming up there this weekend on turf. And they are known for their speed and for their execution. So probably will be another long day Saturday. But I think the story in this really is Louisville's offense finding a way to get down the field, finding a way to score, especially with their quarterback. They finally found one in the 2 or 3 they've been trying out all year, trying to hope something clicks, and something finally did against Syracuse. These 2 teams played on the ACC network, and I will never accept that. Louisville and Syracuse football was on the ACC. I mean, it's the ACC network, but they were on the ACC network. They were on Raycom Sports. Never thought I'd see the day. But great win for Louisville, and they're going to try to move up and try to get to 8 wins and try to capture one of those top half ACC bowls. It's been kind of a disappointing year for them. For Syracuse, it's been all the injuries to the quarterback. They're lucky to still be holding on. It's amazing they scored 17 points against a very good Louisville defense. So we'll see how things move for those 2 teams going forward. Next up, we have NC State and Boston College. Boston College defense is so good. It really is very, very good. They kept NC State to 14 points at the half. Clemson couldn't do that. They got into a shootout with Clemson, and Clemson's defense is supposed to be one of the best in the country. But BC's held them to 14 points in the first half. That is great news. What's terrible news? BC's offense can't do anything. They have no quarterback. They don't have the running backs that they've had in the past. Their offensive line is not blocking anywhere near where it used to. They used to be offensive line U. These giant offensive linemen who just throw people out of the way. They don't have that right now. I love Steve Adazio. I love the toughness he brings. I think it's perfect for a Boston team that, it plays in the cold and all that stuff, but there's no offense. And it was 24-0 in the fourth quarter before BC got a touchdown and 2-point conversion in garbage time. But they have to get some kind of offense going to even have a shot going forward, especially into next year. For NC State, their high-flying offense against Clemson last week kind of got grounded this week. I thought they showed a little bit of fatigue, maybe a little bit of a letdown. Luckily, it was against a team, again, with no offense. So it was kind of easier to take your foot off the gas this week. They won't have the same luxury next week against Florida State. But BC officially not going bowling. They're 3-7 now. They have a bye this week. And they finish up with Notre Dame and Syracuse, so we'll see how that goes. Last up, we have Miami and Virginia. These are two teams that are very hard to get a feel of. Virginia, under Mike London, has really kind of been an offensive dumpster fire this whole time. But if they would have beaten Notre Dame, maybe we would be saying different things. But they have no signature wins under him. Not even really signature losses. Most of them are just losses. They didn't even really come close. Miami lost 58-0 to Clemson and promptly fired Al Golden, something they should have done a year ago, in my opinion, at the end of 2014 year. But they've won their last two games under their interim head coach, and they are now 6-3. They are bowl eligible. It does not feel like Miami is having a winning season, does it? After everything that's happened, they're still 6-3. They're 3-2 in the conference. Ironically enough, exact opposite of Virginia. Virginia is 3-6 and 2-3 in the conference. But they're going bowling. They have some goals ahead of them to still reach. They finished the year against North Carolina, Georgia Tech, and Pitt. Not exactly the easiest road, but I can't imagine they finished 9-3 or anything. But still, a winning season after everything they've been through this year is pretty impressive. As for Virginia, Al Golden has already been fired. I assume Mike London will too. So both teams from this game last week will both probably have new head coaches at the beginning of next year than they did this year. But a strong win for Miami, holding on to the onside kick after a late Virginia score. And we'll be very interested to see how they do going forward in the next games. So there you have it. That's my ACC review for Week 10. Big winners, of course, Clemson, North Carolina, I'll say it, Notre Dame. I'm going to keep counting them as part of the conference, even though officially they're not. And Miami. I think Miami did really good. The losers here, Florida State, obviously, they're officially out of playoff contention. They're not going to win the Atlantic. Something that a player on the team doesn't understand, because they've won the Atlantic the last 3 years and the conference. Other losers, Duke, getting beat by 35 points against arguably your biggest rival in North Carolina. Not a good look. And Virginia, you're not going bowling. One more loss pretty much proves that. Mike London is, I don't even think it's a hot seat. I think it's an axe hanging over his head. But yeah, it's very interesting. I think it was a good week for ACC football, highlighted by the huge Clemson-Florida State game, which shared national spotlights with Alabama and LSU. And I think it was a nice weekend for the conference and one that we'll remember that has ramifications throughout the rest of the year. So thank you guys very much for watching this. I appreciate it. Make sure to like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and I will see you next week. It is a disappointing end. Both of their losses this year have been disappointing to Florida State fans. You had that blocked field goal return, another kick six that will go down in ACC history. Georgia Tech snapping all of Florida State's ridiculous ACC streaks, and then for Georgia Tech to be the team to do it after barely championship and the college football playoff last year in the Rose Bowl. This is a win that Clemson desperately needed to solidify themselves as not only the number one team in the nation, not only the top team in the conference, but also in the division. To beat the champ, you have to beat the champ. And they did that in rather convincing fashion Saturday after allowing a 75-yard Dalvin Cook touchdown very early on the second play of the game. Hey guys, Dustin here to review the Week 10 of the ACC football of 2015. First up, we have to get to the big matchup in the conference this week. You had number 1 Clemson versus number 16 Florida State. You had Florida State, a team that had won the last 3 times these two teams had met. All 3 times have resulted in the division and the conference championship. They represented the ACC in the Orange Bowl, the national championship, and also a couple of big runs on their second possession that resulted in an interception. Clemson's defense rebounded, regrouped, and held Dalvin Cook to under 100 yards the rest of the game. Unfortunately, he still got 194 because you can't take out the big runs for your calculations. But Clemson did a great job. The offense powered through. They stuck to the running game. They didn't get away from it. And they emerged victorious over a 10-point win. They clinched the Atlantic Division. They officially will be in Charlotte on December 5th against North Carolina, who I don't think has officially clinched yet, but they're absolutely out. They've already beaten Pitt and Duke, and a win this week should definitely clinch it if they haven't already. So a big win for Clemson. For Florida State,